Alrighty. Monday night, November 25th, episode 81 of the Leonis support. Welcome back, everybody, and evening, JB. How's it going, man?
Going pretty good. Going pretty good. It's a pretty low key week here as we're kind of gearing up for Thanksgiving. So it's always a good family time of year. Get together, get some good eats, and you got any plans for the holiday?
I do have a big family day for Thanksgiving Day itself. We have a lot of local family here. So, yeah, it'll be like 25, 30 of us getting together, but we also have Friday off for work, and so that is nothing in the pipeline. That's totally just a chill day off that I'll happily take, but not a lot of traveling, which is good, but yeah, what about you? What's going on for the holiday?
So we also have family local, but usually everybody comes to my house. So we're going to be doing a bunch of cooking, and I'm pretty good around the kitchen. I can cook up. I'm going to do the turkey, going to do the stuffing, mashed potato,
Nice.
kind of the normal, Thanksgiving fare. So should be a good time to kind of get together and have some good family time.
I love it. That's good to hear. Are you? I'm a good cook, but I will say I don't think I've ever cooked enough for a full party. So hats off to you to like host something and do the cooking for it.
Yeah, just kind of it's happened over time. I've kind of gotten pretty good, I'd say, with cooking, and our house is generally like the get together spot. Even like for our group of friends, it's often
Nice.
like the we're hosting a lot. So yeah, good stuff.
I love it. Well, good to hear. Well, yeah, regardless, we do have a fun lineup of topics tonight. In lieu of not actually having a news update this week, we do think the current prediction, and this is your prediction, it's a good one, based on the login rewards and when those start to expire, it looks like we're probably not getting any kind of patch until December 2nd, which is a whole week from now. So we're likely not getting news for another, 4 to 5 days. So we do at least know right now what the next patch would be. It is going to be 10.2 oriented. Yuna and Paine and the vision card that came out with them. So we can at least get a head start on talking about that because there have been more and more questions around them than ever. So it is still a good time to talk about and help kind of figure out your accounts and what you want to do and where you can go because there's a lot of change happening in the game, quite frankly, and these units can be a part of it theoretically. But to get into the full topic lineup, we'll talk about Black Friday first and some of the recent deals we just had this week. Honestly, worth giving attention to. We'll do our normal segment of hot takes, where we'll try to throw in a couple spicy opinions, see if we agree with them or not. We will talk about something that we discovered with Jayden, the new King of Conquest unit, that a little surprise for us that we didn't really understand totally, but now we know better, and so we'll talk about what we learned about him. We will also talk then about the 10-2 collaboration, so Paine and Yuna, go through them and some high-level thoughts, some questions about them in the meta, which one do you get if you're trying to pick between a couple of them, and then we actually have some Q&A from last week's segment on last Monday, where a couple of you asked some good comments or good questions in the comments that we didn't quite get to on stream. So KW, Darius, Eric Ironsky, a couple of you guys, we didn't want to forget about you, so we brought them back to kind of talk it out. But throughout the stream, if you guys have questions, throw it out. We will try to do a little bit of an extended Q&A at the end, depending on what we have left. But that's what we got. But we'll kick things off here with the Black Friday deals and all the recent deals. What do you think about that, man? How's that feeling for you?
It's felt good. This has been a good week. Like we've had a couple of good weeks in a row. Like there's already been some good banners that have come through, some good bundles in the shops, but this week, is right there with the best that we've seen in this stretch here, this anniversary stretch. We were the day of the patch, we were greeted with an exceptional bundle with a 5 select unit, 5 select vision card, which I know people were waiting for. Like we
Yeah.
kind of had some teasers from JP. We saw that there was going to be like a select 99, like one vision card, which we also actually got that one too. And that's also like a pretty nice banner to get a complete finished vision card. But 5 select vision cards, like especially for veterans, that's even better because we have all these, Mog medals potentially and the
Right.
stars where, you know, um, you can easily finish out some of those cards. And, if not, you can at least start hard questing them. So um, I think that was a big surprise for a lot of folks. And, I know a lot of people were taking advantage of that and getting caught up on a lot of these hollow vision cards and maybe even some dark espers that they had missed out on the last year.
Absolutely, it was stellar what they did. There was so many deals. I actually missed one apparently on the patch update that I didn't even realize that it was like so many good banners that I didn't even see the level 99 Instamax one. But it's been incredible. I'm sorry, guys are telling me that my mic is loud. Let me tune that down for you. Hopefully a little bit better.
More.
Yeah, I think this should be better, guys. Let me know if the volume's still off. But yeah, I've absolutely loved the deals this week. I think it's really great for the average player to be able to feel like they can participate by getting some of these units now. And the vision cards in particular, obviously, as you mentioned, was really big, where that was something that a lot of people skipped on, quite frankly, over the past 6 months, that now that they're able to catch up a little bit and finally get those cards now is a good feeling, because that is central to a lot of team building. You should feel your teams be more powerful with most of these vision cards, so there is some immediate what do you want to call it, like feel good there about using certain teams. But yeah, the price point I think was spot on too. It's a gotcha game at the end of the day. Like you're going to have some kind of modicum amount of spend, particularly if you do want to really feel like your account can compete. I don't think that's too much ask for a gotcha game or for its active user base. And the price points, like 2K paid for a lot of these, I think is very palatable when you think about the broad world of gacha, where if you look at what the average cost is, not only War Divisions, but like what Nikkei is and what Genshin is, what Honkai is, and how much you can blow in those gacha games. I think this is a very favorable deal, and not even just talking about like some of the 2K paid bundles, but even like the daily login bonuses the last couple of weeks, that if you set $1 a day, these are the daily purchase bonuses that we've been asking for. Although the whale bonuses haven't been stellar, at least the daily purchase bonus has, which is great for minnows, and we've wanted that for a while. We've always felt like it was either whale or nothing. There wasn't really a lot for anyone in between, and the pack F and the good daily like that's exactly the sweet spot. I don't know why they would ever discontinue that. I think that's the right spot to be.
I think this is going to be a good month for the game, because they did bring back that pack F, which, people, to be honest, I wish they would bring it back more. They really should. There's no reason not to bring it back like at least maybe once a month, if not once every couple months. But we did get the pack F this week, and bam, you could get that 5 select bundle we were just talking about. If you spend just $1 a day, like you were talking about, you can get 600 shard selects going up through Exia, who literally just came out a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, if you got her on the select unit, then you can get her up to max LB with those shard selects very, very quickly. And she is one of the top meta units right now, her and Sottily. So you can be well on your way to having a competitive team there. So you really we've bagged on Gumi and Square for a lot of the year, but I think these past few weeks, you kind of got to give them their flowers here, and they've really turned it around, and this has felt like an actual anniversary, felt like a celebration, where, like we've said in the past, it hasn't always felt that way around this time of year. So
Yep.
This is really good for the game, I think.
I agree, and I do hope it shows in their bottom line. I hope they can use that as a takeaway. And I said this, I actually have to comment on Orange A's video, because he made a video talking about how excited and blown away he was by these deals as well. And just because they hand out free units or free vision cards doesn't make your account immediately competitive. You still have to get them to 140. That is still 1,600 blends of shards and mind spheres, not including whatever you do for the reincarnation, not including what you do to Elder Awaken some of these vision cards. There's still a lot more that you have to do to get those units into some kind of playable state. So on the one hand, you might have veterans being like, wow, I just spent all this to get Exia, and they're getting her for free, what the heck? But alternatively, you can say, well, they're not going to Instamax Exia in the one day. They don't get the bingo board. They don't get they have lost time on the double shards for hard quests and barracks, or when they were in the Chocobo expedition. So there's a lot of things that they miss out on by waiting this long, that they can't build them as efficiently. And so, yeah, on the one hand, they get them for free. That's cool. But on the other hand, they likely still can't use them unless they're still spending Viz actively in the shop to get those bundles, that 40 shards per 2K whenever they come up. So I really do think it's a good middle ground to give at least people access to the units for a little bit more cheaply, because they still have to spend to get them up in any reasonable amount of time. Great, you have your level 1 Exia. If you're just going to do barracks and login medals, good luck using her in 8 months. You know what I mean? Because that times 5 units, because you're getting all 5 units at level 1. So, yeah.
I mean, as a whale myself in this game, I don't begrudge anybody for getting these deals or having access to these deals. I want to see them more often because it makes the game a more competitive place. And at the end of the day, that's why I play this game, to
Right.
have fun and compelling and competitive PvP. And in order for that to happen, the mass populace needs to have access to good units and cards. So this allows that to happen. So I'm happy to see it.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah. But we'll get into some of our hot take segment here, and we'll likely come back to this conversation in a couple of minutes. But the first hot take here that we'll go through is the take mono element is back. We've got a lot of units that do line up in the mono elemental sense. We've seen a lot of these teams still be rather potent. There is still a mono element system in place where the mastery and whatnot, the vision cards. This was a hot take that I think you had put up here. Was there anything? What inspired you to have this take, or what chatter did you hear around it, or decisions being made that prompted us to maybe think about it more?
It's just something I've been seeing a little bit more often. And the reason for that is that, I was kind of studying the next gen units and kind of what has come out since back in April, starting with June. And we're at the point now where every element in the game now has at least 3 units that they can field that are next gen, statistics. So some of them even have 4 units. So I think now that, people can actually field, a good team with those units. Maybe they don't have all of them. They maybe mix in an older unit that's still relatively good. And the cards, I think, do allow some of that. We have so many job-based vision cards now that a lot of them are sort of catered towards a specific duo or a set of characters within an element. Like the water ice mix, comes to mind as well, where like the red mage cards are often, you have your Gilgameshes in there, your Agriuses, and you can very easily put together like a mono ice team with a lot of these red mage cards. Same thing with water. And we've been seeing it in Arena and even within Guild War as well. So I think it's alive and kicking. Is it the best? I think that depends. I think situationally, I think it can be. But I think it's definitely competitive.
I'm probably I think this is a slightly cold take. I don't know if I agree with it. If only from the perspective, I don't think it's more back now than it was. Let's say I mean, Sephiroth is an anomaly. That meta that obviously was a very hard rainbow meta of sorts, just by the nature of it. But I don't think it's any more back than it used to be. I still have tried mono element on a handful of occasions, and to your point, some of the vision cards do nail some of the new units on it, so you can use some of these job vision cards for some of the mono elements. But one thing I have noticed is that a lot of the new school, new tech stats on the job-based vision cards simply aren't on the mono element cards. Things like reaction block rate and the wide percent resistance, and even like the man killer, those kind of things that help those modifiers, even like the unit bestowed and some of the extra stats that I've noticed when I make some of those mono element teams, unless I can more reliably weave in the job-based vision cards, I still feel like they are a slight step back. And at the end of the day, there are certain places where, quite frankly, you still leave yourself exposed now more than ever. That if you have one good enemy of the opposite element, you can just lose because you still have a really strong enemy on the other team that can maybe 1v3 your team, which we saw with Sephiroth versus Triple Ice, and we see subtly now with the various forms of lightning. And that risk, I think, is still there and still very powerful because of the strength of these next gen units. That I think it's I don't, I'm not gonna say it's not viable. That's definitely not the case. It's absolutely viable, but I don't think it's any more back than I think it when it was like 6 to 8 months ago.
Well, that's kind of what I mean by that. Like 8 months ago is a long time ago. That's like pre this next gen meta. And we went through a very long stretch there over the summer where I think that it was unplayable, like even on the lower end of the game, because I mean, you saw pretty much across the game that people were just running the latest 3 units. And that was a problem for a while because the critical mass of like each element having a usable next generation unit wasn't there yet. And I think that we finally have kind of are getting to that point where at least you can do it. The caveats to it are
I agree
still
with
there,
that.
and they've always been the same. Even a year or two ago, you could always lose to the counter element. But yeah,
No, that's a fair
I think
take. You're right. The pool of modern usable units has made it so that you can make teams of 3.
it's not the best, but it's viable in some situations for sure.
I like it. All right, well, we'll bring us to another elemental related question, and this piggybacks off of King Delita's question last week in chat that we weren't able to get to. That dark is the worst element in the game. And this is seemingly a hot take because for much of the life of the game, dark has been among one of the safer elements to use, one of the better. A lot of times they were at the forefront of cost 100 units in terms of how they were initially allocating cost 100 units. At that's a little spoiler for what we'll show later. Is this a hot take? Is dark the worst element in the game?
I don't think this is I think this is accurate. I think that unfortunately the kind of tentpole units for that Dark has seen the last few months, they're good. Like Cypher is legitimately good. Angela, I think, is a little bit of a swing and a miss, unfortunately, because I had a lot of copium for her, and she was kind of looking to be that anti-magic unit. She's just not good enough. She's not there.
Yeah.
And if you look beyond that, there's just really nothing else. Like Sunil, she's fine. She's not really doing much of anything. But I think the Dark is going to be getting an infusion here with the X2 collab, and then Dark Veritas is kind of trailing behind her. That's a little bit of a bump for them, but I think even with those 2 units, they're probably still the weakest out of all of them. And I wouldn't be surprised to see like another big Dark unit here in early 2025.
I very much agree with that. I do think dark is likely the worst element in the game. It's not necessarily by a ton, because I do think there are some other elements that still need some work. I still think lightning is slightly unbalanced too. They're really being carried by Lucille at the moment, but these other units, like going any further back than Lucille, these units are all, I guess Ally is the outlier. All these other units are kind of similar to dark in my eyes, where it's like, yeah, they had their heyday, but you really can't use them like you used to. But I do think dark is probably the most unbalanced, because at least like lightning, I feel like you have a lot of good different roles in there. But when you look at dark, there really is no like any like role compression to say you have a character that can duel as a healer and a DPS, or has any kind of like time mage shenanigans like we see with Exia as like some kind of external support with sequential abilities or whatnot. It's just really not there. And honestly, any kind of dark tends to still rely on Wrath to some capability or some degree, because a lot of people have Remax reincarnated, that you're still kind of trying to use that tank that is a centerpiece that, I don't know, can go with teams because it's a mace unit. I don't know. I just don't see who else you could possibly use outside of Cypher. Even Vivi right now has been a harshly power crept because of the AoE wide res and the re-raise remove and a whole bunch of other factors, the healing power down. And Irvine obviously is approaching meme unit territory at this point, if he wasn't already. I don't think it's a hot take at all.
I mean, to be honest, when you kind of think back to last year, 2023, Dark was absolutely dominant in the game.
Exceptional.
For majority of the year, between Sephiroth and Wrath, Dark Fina. Later, they got Lucia. They even got
Dwayne in the middle of the year. They gave Dwayne a great stellar upgrade with a vision card unique to him with a courage remove ability. Completely gave new life to the dark element.
And then, Vivi kind of just capped it off and brought Dark into even a little bit of this year, kind of early on. So it's we kind of have seen this pattern with the developers, where they give a lot of attention to a specific element and then kind of lay off of it for a little bit, let some other elements shine. And I think right now it's probably just they're focusing a little bit more on light and some of the other elements, at least right now.
I agree with this. So, that brings us to our third hot take here, and I actually think this is a very fun one to debate. The hot take is the uptick in paid deals, and to an extent free units, means Gumi is getting ready to pull the plug and end of service us, pump and dump, trying to get as much cash as they can before it ends up closing. There's been some conjecture around this to say, yeah, if they're ending the service, just trying to get as much money as they can. I think there's some credibility to that. I don't believe this though. I think this is a cold take personally. I think the game still has enough of a user base. It has enough of a consistent revenue stream. I think what they've done action wise in terms of Justin and Friends and having some of those community streams have clearly seemed to me that they are trying to actively still get users in. The whole tactics collaboration too, that was not a paid collaboration. That was on their dime that they gave these huge upgrades for people to use. I wouldn't call that a profitable collaboration. If anything, it was really just to bring people back and to maybe give some excitement. That's not the kind of thing that screams cash deal to me. And so while I get the evidence for this and I can see why some people might think this, I think this is a cold deal. I don't think end of series or end of service is on the near term horizon.
I 100% agree with that. I think that the nature of the deals that we've been seeing, even the paid ones, are extremely generous. Where I think people for a select 5 units in VCs, people would have been happy to spend 4K paid on that and still think that they were getting a relatively good deal compared to things we've seen in the past. The fact that it was 2K paid and very accessible for everyone tells me that they're trying to garner some goodwill. They're trying to bring people in. They're trying to set the game up for the next year and not, shut it down in the next few months. So that, in addition to everything you said about tactics, we do know that they're working on Final Fantasy 14 as well, which I assume is going to get the tactics treatment. And, that's another bring people in from that other property, hopefully get them to stay and, yeah, get a bigger player base to draw from when they do bring around these deals.
I agree. And the other thing, I do think though this is a pivotal time for them to realize what their revenue capacity looks like, or like how many new players they actively brought in. I think this is going to be a potential pivot point for them in determining when end of series happens. If they give all these deals and see that no one is still buying them, or they don't get nearly any kind of influx of new players or re-logging in players, or even just engagement. I'm sure they can track those metrics about like how active people are within the game. If they don't see that reflected, I'm sure that has to be evidence for them that this is now kind of like a lost cause and not worth putting the resources into. So that's why I think I've partially been vocal to people to being like, do this, participate. We need to speak with our wallets that like this is still worth buying into, because I could see the case where if people didn't respond favorably, Gumi'd be like, well, we tried, and now obviously the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, and Global is in a much worse position for that than JP is, because our revenue is lower, and obviously there's extra translations and things they have to do for us to keep our game alive. So yeah, I mean, vote with your wallet if you still want to play the game for the next year. Take advantage of these deals, because these are as good as it's gonna be. So it's not gonna get any better next month.
I would agree with this. Yep. This next hot take is one that I actually got inspired by in the main chord. For those of you that participate, might know Korea, who is a very vocal veteran within the community, ex-VIP member, and really kind of pooping on some of the equipment. We were talking about like the Genbu ring that just came out, the raid equipment, and it kind of inspired this conversation about like what kind of equipment is good and what's actually usable. And the hot take is, realistically, only 5% of the equipment in the game is actually good, and the rest of it's kind of whatever. You think it's a hot take, or do you think this is true?
I mean, it feels more true than ever, I would say, especially since like the Reliquaries gear has come along. Less and less I'm kind of going into like the niche equipment than I was in the past, because either the character has their own unique weapon or accessory, or I'm using the Reliquaries one. And a lot of to me that feels like maybe we're due for like maybe some +7 upgrades or something to maybe enhance some of those MR items. Because yeah, right now I think it's I don't know if it's 5%, but it's pretty low compared to like what I have in my box.
I think this is accurate. If you studied our builds over the last 8 to 10 months to a year, you still see the same recurring items in all of these builds. It's the Alex ring, it's the white marshmallow whenever we're in a status effect meta, it's the producer's bow tie, it's the pod 153 accessory. Is that it? That's like basically the Maximilian armor. for your heavy armor
Yeah.
units. Outside of that, even some of these newer items like the plate armor that they came out with, or even some of these Trials of Reckoning items they've come out with, still aren't best in slot for some of these units. Where the other gear that exists, you just put it on because it's so good, regardless. And there's a lot of like forgotten gear at this point that if you went through and like went through the actual equipment to see like what kind of stuff is outdated. I mean, well, we have like do you remember this the Sage's hat? Where's the Sage's? This like when was the last time anyone ever used this? Where's the there's a gauntlet. Where are you? The Bale gauntlets. Like where is that? There's the wolf's hat, I think. Like there's so many pieces of equipment that just are gone, untouched, literally unplayable, not usable, and you have all this reliquary stuff that is not only best in slot, but there's just no reason to ever use anything else. I would agree. Outside of the unique weapons they make for some of these units, and even then, that's not always best in slot for a lot of these units. For a long time, Joom's best weapon was the Save the Queen, and the Wizard Rod is still like the best weapon for most mage units. It's only a couple units where they actually nail their unique weapon that has something good for them that you don't just default to the standard best in slot weapon. So yeah, I think this is mostly true.
I think so. And I mean, the bottom line is that the Reliquary's gear just has better effects than anything else in the game. Like the Wizard Rod you just mentioned, 30 CT when you go below, what is it, like 70% health or 80% health or whatever. That's just untouchable, like when you compare it to the majority of items.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. All right, and then the last hot take here we have is what did I just do? 1 second, guys. Oh no, what did I just do? I I did something.
You lost it.
I
Can you
l-
cancel it and go back in?
Can I undo? Yeah, there we go. The hot take. The 5th anniversary is the most uneventful one yet. Is this true? Is this true? Do you think this, or do you want me to start off with this? Is this the most
Well,
uneventful of the anniversaries?
just before we move on, like I see people kind of
Oh,
mentioning various gear.
yeah.
That like what we're saying there is not to say that there isn't other items to use, but it's a very, very low percentage compared to like the hundreds of, weapons and items that we have. So there's definitely like some hidden gems out there that still get used.
Right.
So
Just for instance, Woad of Carl brought up like some gear never got a +6. Ribbon, Bale Burgeon, Wind Spear. I'll be honest, even if those got a +6, you're probably still not using those. Most of the +6 that we've seen for a lot of those are very minor stat tweaks, not necessarily like entirely new abilities in most cases. I don't know, even think most of those, the +6, would still be usable. Like they're not usable for. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. It's not they're not usable. They're not best for your team. I don't think any of them would get upgrades that would make them suddenly the best option for your team.
it is kind of weird to me that they didn't +6 some of those. Like, why haven't we gotten a +6 ribbon?
Right. I would
Especially
imagine.
now that Agrius is here, like with their huge stop percentage, like getting like an extra percentage on stop would be nice on that item.
That is actually a good call out. I would imagine it's event tied because think Bale Burgeon was raid, but we do raids all the time. They could redo
That
I
was
don't,
from 14, wasn't it? The 14 raid.
I don't
Bale
remember.
version it.
I don't remember.
Windspear was 4.
Yeah.
Was Ribbon part of? I don't think Ribbon was tied into 4. I think that was.
I don't think it was tied to anything. I think Ribbon was the first Trial of Reckoning ever, and that was just
Hmm,
a special Trial of Reckoning that they did.
okay, yeah, they just never went back to it.
Go figure.
Weird.
Yeah. Yep. But okay, yeah, no, that's still a good convo. And yeah, the last take here that the 5th anniversary is the most uneventful one yet. Do you have a strong thought on that, or do you want me to kick it off?
I don't know if I agree with this one. I don't. I mean, because like if you think back to past anniversaries, like what kind of events were going on other than like new power creep is coming in or new units,
I think that's what I was trying to get at. Was that the game felt like it was entering a new era,
new era. Okay.
whether it be the
Well,
collab units or the mechanics or whatever the event, whatever the anniversary brought. You could tell that the game was moving.
I think it's kind of like we're in this little bit of like a limbo period because we don't actually have the new units yet. Like we've got Jayden, and now we're going to get Yuna, and we're going to get Rikku. And like a missile team and an evade team are things that we didn't have in the next gen meta yet. So like, this is like the first building blocks of some new teams. I don't know. I think that I can kind of see it, I guess, a little bit because nothing like is really the power creep isn't there, right? Like they're like kind of on a similar plane. It's just a different look or a different style. Um, so I can kind of see that, but I don't think that it's a bad thing necessarily.
Yeah, I do think this is true, but I don't think it's a bad thing. The reason why I say it's true is if I think back to prior year anniversaries, I immediately think of the reincarnation system for one, when that came out, what that did for the game. Even before that, we had the Trust Stone system released for another one, and both of those alone revolutionized how we play the game, how you strategize around how you build the game, what you do for resource allocation, and even prior anniversaries, you did have certain kinds of collabs that really shook the game. And even like last year with Dark Sephiroth, and even when Final Fantasy X came in, didn't they increase the level cap to 120 at that time? So they all of a sudden they went from
Yeah.
level 99 to 120. There was something that felt different, and they did do that for the 5th anniversary. We have this new commander system, but I think they're doing it in such a slow rollout way that obviously it's not overturning the game like Reincarnation and Trust Stone and level 120 and all of those things did. So I think that's a good thing. I think that kind of jarring game overhaul does sometimes create some unintended negatives in terms of how people play the game. So I think this probably is the most uneventful, particularly because like 10-2 seemingly so far hasn't really like destroyed the meta in JP. Like it's pretty balanced still. And even that collaboration, I don't think has the same draw as some of the bigger Final Fantasy titles. So to say, Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy VII, what it does to like bring people in droves, then that feels like something eventful. I don't think I get that from this, which I think is fine, quite frankly. I think it did a great job celebrating the game, which is what an anniversary should be. Should be a celebration of time. And they did do some upgrades. We still have our quality of life upgrades and what they did for commanders, and I think that's it. I like it.
Yeah, it's that's the funny thing. Like the kind of the new thing for this year was the commander system, and it's like such a nothing burger almost that like I couldn't even think of that when I was going through like
Right.
my diatribe there. So that has been like a little bit of, I don't want to call it a swing and a miss. It's more of like just it's awkward right now
Yeah.
because we don't really have very many commanders to choose from. So there's no strategy or nuance to it quite yet. I can see it becoming a lot more interesting 5 or 6 months from now when everybody has a handful of commanders they can potentially use. But the weird thing to me though is that I have Jayden and he's my commander, but if I have him in my team, I can't. He's not my commander. I can't. You can't. You have to use Mont still. So that's kind of the weird part to it. The other thing they're doing though is the mastery threes, which we don't have them yet. So that was kind of another step forward. So we'll see those soon.
That's fair. I like it. Yeah. Yeah, the commander thing, I'm still don't have a strong opinion because it is such a nothing burger. I don't even mind the fact that you can't use the unit in your party simultaneously because they do allow for multi classes on it. So that's the way I see it. You don't pull Jayden as a commander for a gun team. You clearly pull Jayden as a commander for the sword warrior and the great sword. I think it was, weren't those his two classes? Yeah, like that. That to me is the extra wrinkle in it. And I'm sure once we get 3 or 4 more commanders, all of a sudden it's going to open the floodgates on the different kinds of classes and the interactions it creates. So, because his interactions are pretty potent, but it's only the dual mode, so you very rarely see it anyway.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that's our hot take section. We figured at this point talk about a new discovery about one of the mechanics of Jayden's courage removal, and I think this is probably appropriate to bring up the actual description of it. Who's a good character to compare it to? Pre-courage. Do you think it like Lucille or?
Lucille or Urel.
Yes, we'll start with Lucille. So one of the things that you had realized when you were doing a Guild War battle was that Jayden was at the back of the map, and Garusa and Sephiroth on the enemy team were walking toward you. Jayden, to our knowledge of the skill, has this effect here to dispel ignore courage, and you had shot Garusa and basically finished him off, basically one-tapped him, except his courage remained. And you were very confused. You thought it was a bug initially, because you'd seen some inconsistencies in Arena, and obviously we studied it all, and we all agreed, no, that courage should have been removed. Why didn't he remove the courage on Garusa? And it is specific to the wording of this. What we discovered, and I have a video, we'll show the test for it as well, was that the wording of this is that you do it upon successful attack. Would have Calc doesn't exactly have the right translation to the in-game verbiage, but basically it's not pre-hit that the courage removal is applied. It's basically post-hit on successful attack. And the long story short of that is that it doesn't actually remove the courage if you're landing a finishing blow per se. It's kind of the net effect of it overall. If you hit that unit and you don't kill them, you will see the courage get removed because your hit has been successful. But it's a very wonky timing, and I'll let you expand upon it because you could probably articulate it a little better than I can. But for a comparison of how it's phrased on Lucille, hers is just dispel to ignore fatal damage. I won't even get into the specifics because at this point it's like macaroni coding. But yeah, that's the long of it. Yeah, that's the summary.
Yeah, so I opened a ticket with it, and they basically said this is how they are intending it to be. Personally, I think it's a bad design because we haven't seen a courage removal like this basically since Renell's first release many years ago at this point, which actually they fixed that with her Dream Awakening, and they made it a pre hit courage dispel. So it's really unfortunate to me that they've done it this way with Jayden, because it does, I think, take away a little bit of his anti-wind niche in particular, because those are the units he's most often going to one-tap. And it doesn't even have to be a one-tap. Like, somebody could be at half health already from somebody else on your team, still have courage. If he then brings them down to 0 when it gets to his turn, the same thing's going to happen. So it's a super bad design for him, and I think that it really ruins one of his main, really his only party utility that he doesn't really have very much. This was kind of the main thing that he has, and it was very, very disappointing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it still has value. Like, there still are many opportunities where he does remove the courage, because in that same fight, he removed Sephiroth's courage simultaneously. So it's not like it never works, but it doesn't work with the efficacy that we were hoping, particularly for a ranged unit here. And we have a video example. And the long and short of this is that Garusa, right here, I don't know if you see my cursor, where my cursor is, has courage in effect, and Ramada also has courage in effect. And what you're going to see is that Garusa being brought to courage, he'll proc it, and you highlight here, in game, it says remove courage on attack. So clearly the game coding seems to confirm that that's what's happening. But he's going to hit both of them here, and Garusa's going to proc courage. I'll see if I can pause that. But you'll see that he removed the courage on Ramada. So he brought Garusa to 1. I don't even know how it works. I don't know.
And the difference there is that Ramada still has health left.
Yeah.
So it's a killing blow, or should be a killing blow, onto Garusa in this case. But his courage remains because this is a post damage removal, I guess, is the way that the game looks at it.
Thank you.
So it's kind of like the gimped version of courage removal, I would say. Again, we haven't seen that type of courage removal since Renell several years ago. We've had multiple units since then that, this wouldn't be an issue. We've seen it on URL, we've seen it Luciel, Comral. I think we may have even seen it on some others. So, very, very disappointing, I think.
And I think one of the reasons why we never really noticed it, particularly in replays, and this might be some copium, why it doesn't actually matter in the net effect of things, is that when he's paired with Yuna, who has the follow up attacks universally in the battlefield, Yuna's follow up attack will kill the unit. So Jayden will bring them to one. He will still proc the courage, but then Yuna's going to follow up and they're going to die anyway, so you likely don't really notice it. So it does kind of wash out at the end of the day. But for some of these matchups, you literally lost a Guild War fight because you thought you should have been one tapping Garusa. You didn't. He instead was brought to courage, and then Garusa went again and killed your. Oh, it might have been Gilgamesh, but it was someone with courage, and it didn't remove it when it should have, and you lost because of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me in Arena, the similar situation. So it does make him like very reliant on those follow-up characters, I think, because of that. And maybe that's one reason why it hasn't been complained about maybe too much over in JP, or or at least people haven't been talking about it that much. So yeah, I think, like I said, if you look at what he's actually bringing to the team, like this was kind of the main piece in my opinion, other than his damage. So yeah, I can't get over how verklempt I am about this
I
whole
know,
thing.
I know, I know. I still want to be like the half positive guy and be like, well, it still does remove it, just not as often. Like, it's still good, just not as good. But yeah, the fact that he can't dominate those wind units like that is,
It's unfortunate.
yeah. But we did really just want to share that to bring some discovery to it. But we will get into now Final Fantasy X-2, and in particular, we'll start off here with Paine, who is our new Dark Greatsword unit being added into the game. Is the free cost that they're handing out? It's going to be a 90 cost unit. This is right par for the course with how they normally release these units. It's at first glance a relatively strong unit. I will say I think that our appreciation for her has increased seeing that Dark Veritas is also coming out, who is a Dark Greatsword unit as well, who can seal enemy dispel capability on hit. Because I know if you were to like in a vacuum look at Paine to see what she brings, I know where my first thought goes to, okay, what's their teammate buff? Because that to me is like that's their main source of like what is the core of what they're trying to do, and it's a good one. It's an attack buff, it's haste, it's protect, it's courage, it's AP restore. One of the things these 90 cost units have never done, though, they've never really had any kind of seal capabilities. That's not a new for Paine. All these 90 cost units, as of late, have not had that seal element. So you look at this in a vacuum and you're like, well, yeah, you can dispel haste, you can remove protect, you can remove courage. Like, there's a lot of things there that this isn't all that special in a vacuum. There's still more that is good about her. She has her own ability to like select to remove courage. She does have a barrier break here that's a double hit. She does also have the unit res pen, like reverse, like what Nickel has, where you can decrease enemy unit resistance penetration, which is pretty strong. That is what it is, right? Am I reading that right?
This one's weird to me. Like I don't know if this is buffing her or if this is like another mistranslation. Because
I think this is what Nickel does.
does his say increase as well?
Increase single
Okay.
target resistance penetration.
So that's actually that's a really nice debuff then.
Yeah.
She can AoE. So that's gonna allow her to be a little bit like anti Shrek or anti some of these like select two type units. Because like most of those units they're really like in that 30 to 50 zone. So that takes away, a substantial amount of their power.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, she's got enough in terms of penetrations, and I think damage wise, it's competitive. It's not perfect, but certainly,
That same attack that we were just looking at with the debuff is also a sequential, which will heal the teammate for 25%.
I knew I was forgetting something. Thank you. Yes, which is excellent because this is 25% of their total health pool. So if someone has, nice round number, 10,000 HP, they'll heal 2,500 of it, which is 25%, which for those larger health pools, that's a sizable amount of health. It's not faith-based either. It does get amplified by healing power, but the faith component isn't a factor either. So that's a great sequential ability.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's if you. One thing that I was thinking about with this character is kind of the light dark connection as well. Not only with Dark Veritas, but also Cloud, who can fit into that same greatsword team. And she's bringing the protect and the haste. He brings the shell to the team, so that kind of works together super well too. Yeah, I think that could be a pretty solid combo.
I agree. I'm not excited to like Instamax her.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone's account, but we have appreciated this from the perspective of accounts that aren't trying to blow their bank on this collaboration. That there looks to be a pretty good pairing with her and Dark Veritas as a jumping off point for Dark and Great Sword. There's obviously other great sword units, as you mentioned, even other dark units, but even other rainbow potential units. That this seemingly is a pretty good synergy for a low cost investment that actually doesn't look that bad, quite frankly.
I think when I compare it to like my first take on Tifa and uh who was the one that we just got from Duran, I think was the other one from Trials of Mana. I think that she looks a lot more competitive and more like timely. Like it's not that those units I think were bad, but like their timing just wasn't right. Like Tifo came right into like Sephiroth just dominating everything. Duran came in and Gilgamesh was everywhere. So like solid units, decent kits, but like the timing just didn't seem to fit. That's kind of an advantage that Dark has, where they don't have like those, necessarily natural counters. You do have to worry about Yuna potentially, so that could be a little bit of a problem. But Yuna also has to worry about Paine as well. So um, I don't know. Could be an interesting one. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would agree with that. Out of all the free units given as of late, I have the most hope for her because even if you go further back from Tifa, I think Dagger might have technically been the last free unit before Tifa. There were other collaborations, but they weren't giving out free units. But Dagger was one before that. Renoa actually might have been the best last free unit that we had.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
agreed.
But yeah, that's really all I have to say about Pain.
Oh, if anybody's wondering, this effect that's not translated
Oh,
in her passive ability there, that is a similar to Duran actually. It's a double heal back when she goes, I think, below 50% health.
love
So
that.
it has two charges on it, which is nice.
Love, yeah, absolutely love this. It's so good for their effective HP and just making sure she can stay above a certain threshold because her weapon, which we'll talk about real quick, has a reduction of 15% magical damage when her health is above that. That's a pretty sizable magic reduction. Again, she's not always going to be above 70%, but that double heal back certainly makes it more often than not that you will be taking that 15% less damage. I love this sword. This probably is better than Save the Queen, or equivalent. Save the Queen is the physical oriented nature with the barrier, but this is more obviously magical skewing for her.
Yeah, this is can't be barrier broken or dispelled either, other than kind of getting her below that HP threshold. So she's actually, I think, like fairly balanced when it comes to like magical and physical mitigation, which is one thing that I like about her. I think it makes her fairly flexible. I don't think she's dominant like in either category, but I think she's stout enough that she can hang.
I agree with that, right? Because even this passive is another 12% reduced magic damage. That alone obviously adds up. But then from the physical component, she, as mentioned, has the protect capability. But then the solo buff is a 7,500 physical barrier. So that 7,500 HP certainly can at least take a hit or two before you get into the health pool.
Yep.
Particularly if you have the protect applied. That's double whammy right there. So yeah, I like it. See what they do. Great Sword is still in a great spot vision card wise. I've actually kind of held on to this, not copium, but this hope that Great Sword would still remain relatively competitive in some kind of sense. That between Joom and Cloud and all the amazing vision cards they have, that Great Sword should still be able to kind of like come in and still feel like they can be a threat. I'm not saying Payne's the one who's going to do it, but I like the fact that they're still emphasizing it to a degree.
And these two unit and Pain and then Dark Veritas do offer some new things that Greatsword hasn't had before.
Yes,
We talked a little bit before, like the Hastiga and the Dispel Sealing. Dark Veritas also has got the Barrier Sealing.
correct.
We do need to. We're going to be waiting on Dark Veritas a little bit longer, but maybe by like January he'll be 140able. So no reason to rush Pain. I think maybe you can time it for when this guy comes online.
I think that's really smart. I would agree with that. But the other unit, and obviously the more hyped of the two, is Yuna, who is another missile unit here, is the 100 cost. I think the one big flashy thing that a lot of people took away from her is that she does have the follow-up attack, but she's the first unit ever where it's not proximity based, that she needs to be within a certain amount of tiles of an attacker. She grants it universally to the field that no matter where your teammate is, they will have a follow-up attack. And so I think that adds some great flexibility that you don't have to keep your missile units clumped together. It obviously is really reliable, just straight damage and positioning wise. That it's just free damage. I don't know how to say it. Like that's a really nice value add.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
it's a buff that she puts on to her teammates, and then that allows the follow up attack when they
Thank you.
attack, no
Yes.
matter where they are. Yeah, so there's no range associated with it. They can be 10 tiles away. It'll still work, and it is something that she will double, or even I think she'll like just keep using it until she runs out of casts. So
So be careful
that
with
is
it.
kind of, yeah, that's maybe that's what you want to do, but maybe if you don't want her putting it on a support unit or something, maybe. But that is something I think that you're going to need to look at with her AI. How are you going to position her so that you can get the optimal uses of that, of the follow up? Whether you want her to use it multiple or not.
And no, Brandon asked a question. Irvine didn't do that. No, no follow up unit so far has ever had it so that it doesn't matter how far away your units are. You had to be within a certain proximity of the unit for it to land a follow up. This, you could be as far apart away as you want. It's going to work.
Yeah, the previous follow ups have either been buffed on like an LB, like Astrius, or like Noctis, or Lightning, or they've been like an aura ability like Gilgamesh or Bart's, where you're within that proximity and like 3 or 4 tiles.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. And yeah, I mean, I love this unit off the buff alone. Again, that's kind of my jumping off point here for a lot of units. That 20% increased damage, you're going to feel that in the first turn or two of the fight. The Dispel Haste at range, I think, is exceptionally powerful right now with the amount of Dispel Seal that we're seeing. That if you can land this before you get sealed, and hopefully you do because you would have the range advantage, I do think this is one of the better forms of counterplay because that seemingly is kind of taken over the game, at least for this current map cycle that we're on, where you're just seeing Lucille double haste 2 units. Exia or Shreka are sealing the enemy, ability to remove that haste, and you're literally just winning on turn order, particularly with all the CT up you're seeing in the game right now with all these different units. That I like that she brings this component to the team, in addition to other things. I mean, I'll be honest, 20 healing power isn't enormous, but I think that's the kind of thing that every little bit helps. We are seeing a lot of sustain in the game right now, so that could be the difference. It's hard to say if it is, but yeah, I like this unit for what she brings to for synergy with Jayden. I reiterated this many times. She has the unit crush for him as well. That he does have a fair amount of unit res pen with his gun and the vision card, but in case you now want to be more flexible with either one of those and you don't feel like you have to equip them on him, you would now have a crush to complement his damage. She also brings this removal of magical honeycomb, which is more and more popular as of late. And so for Jayden now, he doesn't have to worry about range honeycomb barriers, which not everyone has, but enough units have, particularly in the bow matchup. I know there's a lot of bow units that have focused on that, so missile versus missile, that helps a lot. I'll pause there, though. There's still a lot to go over.
And the untranslated effect there on the buff, this one is actually increases her range by 2. But this one, I believe, is also going to give her the re-raise ceiling
Yes.
and the CT null as well, which is another thing that's
Thank you.
massive right now with Exia and Sodali in particular. Also the Wizard Rod, which we've talked about too. But yeah, similar to Orlando, who can debuff the CT nullification, Yuna can do that as well, which especially for units that are kind of moving towards you and taking damage. If they were able to proc that CT up, that's going to allow them to get into you and potentially double turn you. So that is going to, I think, allow this missile team to actually be competitive and deal with sieging attackers. She does have
Completely
a debuff on hits for missile resistance. It's tied into her
Her gun.
weapon.
Yes. Yes. Which I like this. That's nice.
Yep, because she doesn't really have any missile resistance penetration, I think, is one thing that I've noticed.
It's on her limit break, but that is it. There's no other
Just the
missile res
limit break.
pen anywhere, to my knowledge. I don't think it's anywhere else in the kit. Yeah. It's just on the
She's got
weapon.
like, I think she has like pretty fair survivability too. Like she's got a little bit on the passives. She's got the re-raise, which she can seal, and she's got a passive honeycomb barrier as well. It's not like the full strength one, but I think it's gets up to like 12 or 18% damage reduction. I think this unit is very good. I think that it's going to be competitive at the top end.
I agree completely. And just to kind of segue too, because we're going to talk about it soon, I do see the natural synergies with her and Jayden. Because to your point, Jayden didn't have a lot of teammate utility. Her buffing him suddenly greatly amplifies his team utility by applying these effects throughout the battlefield in addition to her. So you're going to have some more reliability in how widespread you can actually seal re-raise and put the CT nullification down and dispel haste. Both of them are going to do that. And then he also has that sequential ability where you can heal a teammate and CT up. So as these missile units get a little bit lower in the health department, like he's going to kind of self-sustain either her or himself. And one of the things I realized kind of doing the vision card analysis, his vision card is the 24% area res. We're going to just briefly skip ahead. Her vision card is 20% physical wide resistance. So you're going to be doubling up there on two different kinds of AoE res for them. One for the physical wide res and one for just regular AoE. That should they still like be relatively grouped together, and it's not a select 2 ability, if they're getting AoE damage, they shouldn't die like a feather to it, which is what we've seen with a lot of missile units, is that they too easily get one tapped. But I think between both of them, not only having the re-raise and the seal and the healing there, and then like all this other stuff, I think all of that's going to add up to them being a little more bulky than we're used to seeing, which they needed. Missile units really needed that.
I mean, and even right now, I mean, we have Jayden already. We've been using, unless you're going up against a fire unit, he's not easily getting one tapped.
No.
I mean, I've gotten damage capped by Sephiroth for sure, but usually that's been off of like a chain. I think that Jayden's area resistance is good enough that Sephiroth can't generally one tap him from range. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a strong combo, especially if you have some support or maybe some, even a tank out front to kind of run interference. There's some different ways that you can run them, and we've seen some experimentation with that over in JP already.
We have, which leads us to our next topic about Yuna, is asking the question, what is the question? Are Jayden and Yuna the next powerhouse team? And one of the things that we saw with the number one guild in JP, why isn't it reflecting here? Could have I could have sworn Froze ran this the other day. Why is it we saw the number one guild use a wall of Resnick, Jayden, and Shreka. I'm not seeing it at the moment though. Where are you?
Maybe just go into the guild records.
Yeah. And that was the wall they ran the last 2 days. That's so weird. Maybe it was.
I think they just swapped off of it the last few days.
Maybe that's what it was. Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah. For a couple days, so clearly they've gone away from it. But it was enough of a flash in the pan. It made us ask the question: is this the new powerhouse meta team? Do you want to answer that? Do you think that they're the next powerhouse team?
I think that they're in the conversation, and I mean, this kind of gives you some information to that. Like you can see here they're rotating between a lot of teams that we're using already. So I think it just gets added to the collection that's another look that they can bring out to maybe throw off other guilds. But I mean that's part of some of like the mind games of like the top 10 meta, and it's a little bit different than where like the guilds are a little bit more agile and maybe changing things up than in other parts of the bracket. Um, Maybe we can just take a look at the units themselves and see like adoption rate, maybe see
Oops, wrong Jayden.
across the ladder.
Yes. So Jayden, Ice Jayden here, and I'll go back, let's say a month. And I'm going to be generous here. Top 100 guilds, 9%. Honestly, that's not awful for top 100, but JP is a little bit different. Top 50 probably gets a little higher. I would imagine top 10 probably gets decent. 20% on offense. That's pretty good.
I was looking on defense.
On defense, top 10 spikes up and down, but 13% to 6%. That obviously is that one wall day, I think. And that's where you're seeing skew that. I mean, I do think they're a new powerhouse team. I don't necessarily think they're a meta defining team, but I also think it's a little bit early for them. We just got the Jayden Vision card. All we know next week, it could be another Vision card with gun on it, or it could be another Vision card that has Staff Devout on it, because I know they're kind of building that out with gun too. There's literally anything they could do in the next couple of weeks that might enhance this team or what they can do. Because right now we're just seeing them mostly run, let's say with Summer Resnick at the top end, but I'm sure there's a variety. And you can see that from Jayden's card. It's Sword Red Mage and Staff Devout, which are two of the best rainbow classes you could ask for. That I do think this team has room to grow. And still, at the end of the day, I think it's always map dependent. It's hard for me to endorse a missile team without knowing the maps you're talking about, because we so frequently, this Guild War map in particular, the one right now in Limited Guild War, not a terribly conducive missile map. You can make it work, and we've seen Jayden be used, but I wouldn't call this a missile map. Tomorrow they could do a map that's not missile friendly, and this team just doesn't do well. So I think that's the biggest variable for these units, that it's the biggest unknown.
I mean, I think you can see it right now if you compare playing Jayden like on the free match map that we have right now compared to the arena map. And I think it's night and day, like compared to, just because of the topography of the maps. And, the arena map is very flat and open. And the free match map is very disparate and has like, some height variations to it that for a gunner in particular, that is kind of, for whatever reason, that has been the developers' design of the unit, that they have, they don't have as many arcing shots available to them like bow
Right.
units do.
Right.
I did want to kind of piggyback on your point too, that JP has just gotten the Trials of Reckoning item this week for X2, and it is pretty significant, I think, for Yuna, because it gives her a passive +1 range, which we haven't seen on a item before.
Oh.
I think it's actually not very good for the other characters, but for Yuna in particular, I can see this being used quite often.
That's
She
really
doesn't have,
interesting.
like, she only has +1 range, I think, that you'd normally be using in her passives, which is actually kind of a knock on her, right? And that's only if yeah, you can bring in a second one, I think, if you use the sniper passive, but you're not going to do that.
Don't do that.
So
That's
this gives
really
her,
nice.
so that gives her like that extra range that she was missing, I think.
Very interesting. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan. I'm looking forward to it. It does also ask the question, which is the next follow up, because we've had this debate: Yuna versus Rikku. Which one do you get if you can only get one? And this is a little bit of a look ahead to Rikku, because she's not coming out this first week, but Rikku is the new next gen evade unit who does have some null sure hit capabilities. I think she's got more innate bulk than most evade units have gotten as of late, where she seemingly can absolutely take not just one hit but multiple hits. And Earth as we know it subtly has that blind capability, but technically Riku's coming in here with a TMR that also is kind of leaning into that blind effect, that this is now maybe going to be more prevalent in team building. And then you talk about Earth in general, what they have for evade cards, and we know that Ninja Blade and Dagger are getting combined in the job classes. So there's seemingly a lot of things that are going her way here. Do you have a confident answer to say, like, which one do you prefer, Rikku or Yuna?
It's kind of a tough question because I think that these are both completely new teams that they're kind of starting from the ground up. So we kind of had a similar situation very early this year, like back in January, when you look at Greatsword, it wasn't in a very good position when A2 was coming into the game. And that was kind of the reason why she didn't immediately take over. She struggled a little bit against the incumbent Black Mage team, at least for about a month. And we actually saw the Strike team actually dominate because it was fully baked, and the Kitone had great teammates that she could turn to. In this case, I think that this is similar to the A2 situation where Rikku doesn't have a great partner other than Sadali, who you mentioned. That's a good team, but it's very one-dimensional. Yuna, on the other hand, she didn't have anybody either initially when she dropped in JP, but now she just got Jayden, and we have Jayden already. So I think that for day one impact, I think that Yuna is the clear winner. For going forward, we do know that there's going to be more development to Dagger, probably going to be the new Venera unit.
Thank you. Yep.
So there is more to come, I think, for Riku's story. So my advice would be to pull for the one that you like more. I think that they're both, at the end of the day, they're both going to be competitive units. One of them you just may need to wait a little bit longer. If you already pulled Jayden and you're kind of all in on the missile team, then I think you have to go for Yuna, though.
I think that's really sound advice. I wouldn't disagree with that. I know I have an opinion, but I agree with anyone that resonates to how you phrase that. Me personally, I think I would say Yuna, and not only just for the day one impact, but I think for like the average player, as good as evasion is, it still typically requires some element of reincarnation because of the power creep of accuracy in the game that you really do for these evade units need that extra evade stat and the luck stat. If you don't have that and this unit isn't actually evading, they're not really doing their job then. That's kind of a necessary component of an evade unit. The moment they stop evading, they kind of lose their value. And you've seen that with Lucio. You've seen that with Sunil. A lot of these evade units, if they don't do it, then they're just done. So I think that's an important angle for anyone thinking about really using this very competitively. But I also know that when it comes to team building for these units, you are slightly handcuffed in how you have to team build them because you typically have to go double luck cards or double evade cards or somewhere in your team building you're doing something that you have to kind of like handcuff yourself. Whereas I don't think you have that same problem with gun units. Sure, you have to use gun-oriented vision cards, but you don't need missile attack. Like there's other forms of offensive multipliers and whatnot. But when it comes to evade units, and we've seen Riku's vision card, again, kind of like a spoiler to what comes up ahead, they did not opt for the route of luck percent on this. Not only is it a slower agility value, but they just went for flat evade rate, which is not the worst, but it also doesn't make her very accurate. You still need a luck percent on the subvision card. It's not bad, but to me, when I think about the average player and like what it takes and the return on investment, I think evade has maybe a shorter shelf life. And even if it does have a longer shelf life, you really have to like dedicate your entire team for it. You can't really go halfway on that kind of team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit biased because I did get a lot of mileage out of
Right, Yuffie, exactly.
in 2023. Like she was a legitimate threat for a very long time. Of course, there was units that hard countered her. Like Bradley was a huge counter against her, but she was still viable. We saw actually the Genova Guild ran her well into this year.
Yes.
As a full guild, and got many wins and was a top 10 guild with the Yuffie wall. So I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot. I see that there was somebody in the chat mentioned that Rikku is going to be better for veterans, and I think I would agree with that because there is a lot of built up cards that I think are going to be able to optimize her not only for mono earth, but also for that dagger / ninja team. Like the Yuffie's card is a prime example of that with the evasion and also like the crit damage. Like that's going to be a good like sub card potentially for this team. Whereas like the next one up is probably you're looking at Shiva, or maybe if you manage to get Elena's fundamental forces, that's also in the picture. But
I agree.
Yeah, so if you go to like the next slide here, I think I have the combined one. If you just press down.
Nice, thank you.
Yes, this is visible like on my tool for everybody. You can't click on it. You have to go to Ninja and then just click down, and you'll get to this view. Once it goes live for global, I'll make this the default view, but it's actually a much better card situation than either of the groups has right now. So this becomes much more competitive of a team, but even despite this, I think that they still have a lot more to go. I think I'm still going to need to see 1 to 2 more units and like 2 to 3 more cards before this group like seems top tier to me. I think it's going to be usable though, at least.
I would agree. Yep, I think those are sound takes, and we'll know more in 3 weeks from now when Rikku comes out for us, because we'll know ahead of time what JP has for the roadmap. We're going to be getting a Christmas unit here sometime in the next like 3 to 4 weeks as well. So there's still a lot of factors that can go into that decision making. That if you can't decide, maybe just wait on Yuna and see what they come out with for Rikku, or watch the JP meta and see what they do. But that's one of the other things that I think. Last point on this, because we do have some Q&A to still get to, is that I would worry a little bit about Rikku and the evade team, given the accuracy of this missile team. That the innate accuracy of Yuna, who I think is the most accurate unit in the game, and Jayden certainly can get there too. That makes it difficult when there's so many options. And then even Shreka, because she has the luck percent vision card, a Shreka built out with luck can like, I don't know if she can one tap, but she can destroy like a mono Earth team, or Rikku in particular. That even Shrek is still a really, obviously now highly adopted unit by most of the player base. That there's enough like counters out there to her that yeah, it's gonna really be fickle for what they do for the next step, because mono Earth Vade right now has some limitations.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at, who that, I mean, that is going to require like the game to and players to change up their gearing though. Like, so
Yes,
just the threat of Rikku is going to change the meta and what we're using. Because you don't want to be caught with your pants down, which, people will definitely be exploiting that and taking advantage of that. And, work on your Alex rings, your marshmallows, all of that ACK gear, your luck sets. You're going to need that stuff because, she is going to be coming in a couple weeks here.
absolutely.
But you're 100% right. Yuna is the most accurate unit in the game. And the advantage that missile units have is that they don't need necessarily to gear for survivability as much. So it's less of like a competitive disadvantage for them to wear that accuracy gear too. So
Totally. But yeah, still a good conversation to have that I'm sure we'll keep having, because we still have, God knows, 2 weeks or a week for the news and a whole bunch of extra time. But we did want to still touch on the vision card here as well, and then some of the Q&A. This vision card is great sword and gun, so it does at least combine Paine and Yuna. It's still a swing and a miss that Riku's not on here as that third party, but it is Sword Warrior as the other party. It's a whopping 18% agility, the 20 crit damage, the 20 physical wide res, and for dual effect, 15% crit rate. Absolutely noteworthy, because this is a main slot vision card that you're going to get the full value of that critical rate. The unit bestowed is kind of whatever, HP and attack, okay. But it is nice that they have the 40 dex and the 15 AP on the base stats too. Certainly does help this whole build and conversation for Yuna, who's likely wearing this. I don't know if there's any other physical gun units you might put this on. Maybe your great sort of warrior units, obviously, for those oriented type of teams, but I do like this card. This is in a must-pull category for me, for considering that it's limited as well. This is, great sword and sword warriors certainly have shown the test of time that they can play. That I like it.
kind of going back to that conversation earlier about mono elements, and when I look at these cards, like you can see like, if you played a specific element, like a lot of people still kind of are living within that elemental headspace. This is a light and dark card. Like you can see clearly, by far the most units, and like great sword and warrior and even gun to an extent have been like hallmark jobs for those elements. So, just kind of a funny footnote.
No, it is.
But yeah, I think
Can I point out Dark real quickly? We just talked about Paine and Dark Veritas and Cypher. There's your mono Dark team. Like there's your three right here on the card.
Should be a pretty good team. Yeah, and same thing for Light. You got Yuna and the Veritas of the Light, who hopefully some of us will have online in another month or two.
Yep.
But yeah, 18% agility. Like you always love to see that for that speed advantage, and getting the wide res and crit damage too, like in the main slot, I think is nice.
Absolutely, particularly for the follow-up damage. That's the really big component of this crit rate. Is if you're doing a follow-up attack and it does not crit, that's a significant damage loss. It's usually like half the amount of damage if you're not critting. So that's a pretty big component on like the explosiveness of that team, and oftentimes is the difference between whether or not you finish off an enemy or even if they re-raise. Sometimes that's a difference of that follow-up attack killing them with that percent of HP that they re-raised with. So like there's a lot of ways that I don't have to tell you guys about. You've seen the follow-up meta enough over the last 8 months